Hello Revolution students, and welcome back to another video on the Chinese Revolution Area of Study 2. In this video we are going to look at Jiang Qing and her contribution to the creation of a new society in China between October 1949 and 1976. We're going to begin with a look at her background first, so let's get into it. So, she was a Shanghai actress and she arrived in Yunnan in August 1937 and then became Mao's fourth wife in 1938. She remained out of politics until the early 1960s when Mao himself encouraged her to investigate popular culture and the creative arts, i.e. to remove reactionaries and capitalist roaders and revisionists from within Chinese culture, and this was the beginning of the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution, the GPCR. And she played a key role in the Cultural Revolution, which we're going to look at in a sec, but she was arrested in 1976 as a consequence of her role in the Cultural Revolution, along with the other members of the infamous Gang of Four, Zhang Chunqiao, Yao Wenyuan, and Wang Hongwen. Let's look now at how she contributed to the creation of a new society in China. So, the big one was that she was a key figure and one of the driving forces of the Cultural Revolution. And I have a nice quote here from Frank Dakota, which outlines her role and how she got drawn into this by Mao. But Mao had not brought his wife into the political arena to attack a few playwrights. He needed somebody he could trust for a much more important mission, one that aimed far above the Ministry of Culture. In February 1965, he sent Jiang Qing on a secret assignment to Shanghai as culture would become the stage from which the next revolution, the Cultural Revolution, was launched. And if we give a little bit of historical context for this quote from Frank Dakota, if you think back a few years earlier where Mao was pretty much pushed aside by the leadership within China as a consequence of the failures of the Great Leap Forward and the policies of the Great Leap Forward, which he had wholeheartedly supported. And he was pushed aside, and Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping came to the fore and implemented a number of economic policies to revive China's economy and increase food production to put an end to the famine. For a brief time in between 62 and up to 64, 65, he was in the background, but he wanted to regain control over the CCP Central Committee. He wanted to become the preeminent leader of China once again because he feared that the revolution was going off track as a consequence of the capitalist policies or semi-capitalist policies that were put in place by Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping. And Jiang Qing, his wife, was one of his key allies in enabling him to do this. Okay, so the other key contribution of hers was that she promoted the Red Guard movement along with the other Gang of Four members with Mao's blessing. She sat on important cultural revolutionary bodies such as the Central Cultural Revolution Group, and in the arts themselves she was a patron of the 8 revolutionary model operas. Perhaps the most famous of those is The East is Red. And that is all on YouTube if you wish to have a look at it. It's quite entertaining. Okay, apart from these things, she also played a key role in persecuting other CCP leaders deemed as revisionists or capitalist roaders during the Cultural Revolution. For example, at a CCP meeting on the 18th of March 1968, she, with other members of the Central Cultural Revolution Group, attacked Liu Shaoqi, Peng Duhui, and Deng Xiaoping as traitors and spies. She shouted, "Down with Deng Xiaoping." And the other key contribution that she made to China at this time was that she was seen as an important female leader and role model for women in China during the 1960s and the 1970s. Okay, let's have a look at some key quotes now from Jiang Qing. So the first one is, "The more brutal, the more revolutionary." So this key quote demonstrates her attitudes towards the use of violence during the Cultural Revolution and advocates it. And the second quote, "Don't put your faith in the work teams. The power of those leaders who are fundamentally on our side should be strengthened. The power of those who are fundamentally against us should be seized." So she said this in July 1966 at the very beginning of the Cultural Revolution. And if you remember back when Liu Shaoqi tried to stop the Red Guard activities at Beijing University and other universities and middle schools, he sent out work teams to try to control the Red Guards, and Jiang Qing was totally against that. And she said this quote, to attack the work teams and allow the Red Guards to continue with their protests. And then the final quote is sort of linked to the Four Olds movement and her attitudes to old culture and old ideas. So she mocked those who admired foreign culture and machines, saying they sniff foreigners' farts and called them sweet. Let's have a look at some key stats now. So Jiang Qing, along with other key leaders of the Cultural Revolution, such as Mao Zedong, played a key role or were responsible for the numerous deaths that occurred at this time. One of the key campaigns of the Cultural Revolution was the Cleansing of the Ranks campaign. And it was a campaign to rid what it was believed to be corrupt CCP members from the CCP party. So many CCP members were struggled against, tortured and killed, and Jiang Qing, along with the other CCP leaders such as Mao Zedong, are responsible for these deaths. So the first estimate is from Inner Mongolia. 22,000 CCP members were killed and 120,000 were maimed, and these estimates come from Michael Lynch. The second estimate is from Hubei province, where 2,955 CCP members died after being tortured. And then the final estimate is from Beijing itself, where 3,731 CCP members were estimated to have been killed during the Cleansing of the Ranks campaign. Okay, now I have a quote here from Michael Lynch about Jiang Qing and her role in the Cleansing of the Ranks. The dispersal of the Red Guards did not mean a weakening of the movement against the anti-Maoists. Indeed, the PLA squads who replaced the Red Guards were, if anything, even more vicious in their persecution of counter-revolutionaries. And I remind you, this is during this period when the Red Guards were sent out to the countryside to cool off by Mao Zedong after the Red Guards had pretty much brought the whole country into anarchy. The CCRG, with Jiang Qing's Gang of Four playing the most prominent role, developed a new campaign known as the Cleansing of the Ranks. The result was an orgy of killing and destruction as grim as anything perpetuated by the Red Guards. Okay, I've got a couple of other historical interpretations now for you about how Jiang Qing contributed to the creation of a new society in China during this period. So let's have a look at them. So the first one is from Frank Dakota, and he writes, "She, Jiang Qing, had started to compare herself to the only empress ever to have ruled in Chinese history, namely Wu Zetian. Articles praising the 6th century empress as a great unifier of the nation appeared in the press, even though she was popularly reviled as a ruthless, wicked ruler who had mercilessly crushed opponents. Madame Mao had several imperial gowns tailored after those of the empress, although she never wore them in public. She held court, receiving a stream of foreign visitors and signing her photographs in imperial red. And the second historical interpretation I have for you is from Tom Ryan, and this is a more positive interpretation of Jiang Qing's contribution to the creation of a new society in China. The Red Guard movement represented a profound change in societal attitudes. For young people to stand up to their elders, indeed to be totally free of traditional authority, had been unthinkable in China. Now it was right to rebel. Girls too played a major role in the movement and thereby subverted traditional expectations. Jiang Qing and Ni Yuanzi represented an inspiring example of women taking a greater public role in leadership. Okay, so that is our video on Jiang Qing and her contribution to the creation of a new society in China between October 1949 and 1976. I hope you have found it useful for your study of the Chinese Revolution, Area Study 2, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.